Venezuela. Venezuela has been repeatedly ranked among the most corrupt countries in the world, experiencing long-standing issues tied to the management of vast oil wealth, political instability, and weakened accountability systems. Public sector corruption has touched institutions at many levels, with critics noting widespread mismanagement of resources and limited transparency in government dealings. These patterns have been linked to Venezuela's broader economic and political crises, where the lack of independent oversight has contributed to deep mistrust between citizens and the state. Iraq. In Iraq, corruption has been one of the most persistent problems since the early 2000s. In the aftermath of decades of war and political upheaval, public procurement, reconstruction contracts, and oil revenue management have often lacked transparency and effective oversight. Decades of conflict have weakened institutions tasked with accountability, allowing patronage networks and rent-seeking behaviors to flourish. As a result, many Iraqis view corruption as intertwined with everyday governance challenges and a barrier to economic recovery and public trust. Nigeria. Nigeria's corruption challenges are linked to its history as a major oil producer combined with weak institutional checks and political patronage systems. Public officials have frequently been accused of diverting state revenue, especially from lucrative oil contracts, for personal gain. Oversight bodies have often struggled to enforce anti-corruption laws effectively, and citizens regularly report bribery in areas like public services and law enforcement. These factors have made corruption a central issue in discussions about Nigeria's development and efforts to improve governance. Brazil. Brazil experienced high-profile corruption scandals in recent decades, with investigations like Operation Car Wash revealing systemic graft within public enterprises and political circles. Large-scale bribery schemes uncovered in state-owned companies and linked to major infrastructure projects exposed the depth of political corruption and its ties to campaign financing. While these probes brought many officials to justice, they also highlighted how entrenched corrupt practices can become and how difficult it is to rebuild public trust in political institutions when corruption becomes widespread. Mexico. Corruption in Mexico has long affected political, economic, and social life, with public procurement, law enforcement, and bureaucratic processes often seen as vulnerable to bribery and influence peddling. According to major corruption indices, Mexico scores well below the global average on perceived public sector integrity, reflecting both historical legacies of elite power consolidation and ongoing challenges in enforcing transparency and accountability. This environment has contributed to public perceptions that government officials often act with impunity and that reform efforts face significant resistance. Ukraine. Corruption in Ukraine has deep roots that date back decades, with bribery and misuse of public office affecting many parts of society, from law enforcement to public services. Although recent years have seen sustained anti-corruption reforms and public pressure against political graft, perceived corruption remains widespread, with Ukraine scoring far below the global average on major international corruption indices. These challenges are tied to decades of political transition, powerful oligarchic interests, and the ongoing effort to build transparent institutions while also facing external pressure from conflict and geopolitical tension. India. In India, corruption has manifested across multiple sectors, from public service delivery to major infrastructure and licensing processes. While India has robust democratic institutions and active civil society movements against corruption, everyday bribery, bureaucratic red tape, and political cronyism have remained persistent challenges. High-profile scandals have periodically gripped the public imagination, prompting debates about the effectiveness of anti-corruption laws and enforcement. The result is a complex picture where democratic oversight coexists with ongoing concerns about misuse of public office. Turkey. Turkey's anti-corruption landscape reflects tensions between centralized political authority and mechanisms of accountability. Observers have pointed to limitations in judicial independence and media freedom as factors that can shield powerful actors from scrutiny. While not always at the very bottom of global corruption rankings, perceptions of corruption in Turkey have been influenced by concerns about political influence over key institutions and challenges in ensuring transparent public procurement and public sector integrity. Pakistan. Pakistan has faced recurring challenges in public sector corruption, with institutions often perceived as vulnerable to political influence and weak enforcement of accountability mechanisms. Recent corruption index data show Pakistan's ranking slipping in global perceptions of public sector corruption, reflecting broader concerns about governance, the judicial system's independence, and the effectiveness of anti-corruption agencies. These trends have shaped both domestic politics and international views on Pakistan's institutional strength. Philippines. In the Philippines, corruption has been a persistent issue spanning many administrations, with surveys indicating that many citizens see bribery and favoritism in public services and political life as everyday problems. Transparency International's data show the Philippines scoring below average on global corruption indices, reflecting concerns about accountability, patronage politics, and the enforcement of anti-corruption laws. Public discourse often links corruption to broader debates about governance reforms and the rule of law in the country.